stay safe. I'm Anson Tebbetts with the Vermont Agency of Agriculture. We know many of you are hurting. Through the next few minutes, we're going to share some information with you to try to help you get through this pandemic. We've got some special guests as well. We have a number of resources for you, and we want to talk about those right now. Some information from the Agency of Agriculture as we get ready for the response and the recovery during this pandemic. We're trying to find new markets for food that was destined for restaurants or institutions like schools. We're trying to increase the amount of local food that's going into grocery stores in response to that increased consumer demand. We're supporting farmers to sell direct to consumers as farms remain open during this time, and consumers are wanting those home connections and the farm connections. We're launching web-based purchasing options to expand market channels without that person-to-person contact. We're providing guidance to farmers, producers, and consumers about the latest up-to-date guidance from the governor and our health officials. And we want to ensure that the ag community knows about and can access all federal and state stimulus programs that are released. Now to our special guests. So, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a wild ride for you over the last few weeks, but let's start, maybe start with a little bit of history about how your company got started. You started with a place up in the kingdom, the Northeast Kingdom, in Greensboro and in Hardwick, and you were making, you were a distiller. And talk a little bit about how that became a company, and then we'll work our way up through today where you're making sanitizer. So a little bit of history first. How'd you all get started?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to tell our story, and thank you for having me here. This is it's great to be. I wish we were in person, but here we are on the new way that we meet and chat. So we got started up in Hardwick. We were founded by Todd Hardy, who's a Greensboro farmer. But Todd just had a lifelong love for bees and agriculture. And I was a home brewer from Plainfield, Vermont. I owned a small home brewing store called Local Potion. And I was fascinated by grains and fermentation. And when I met Todd, I just really enjoyed his kind of vision for adding value to agriculture. And Todd's goals were to build a distillery and use raw honey in distillation. And it just seemed like a really inspiring person to work with and work for. But two, it seemed like a really honorable mission to take, raw honey and these bees that are just incredibly threatened, quite frankly, right now, and find a way to support beekeepers, around the region by fermenting, distilling, and producing spirits from raw honey. So that was around.
And you're pretty much a young company as well. You 2011, 2012, you really got started?
Yeah, that was 2011. And it's just been kind of a wild ride. We went to market first in Vermont and then Massachusetts and soon New York. And we had a little 15-gallon direct fire still. So we had a little 15-gallon copper pot still that we were making gin with a little fire underneath it. And it was basically as fast as we could produce the gin, it was just kind of flying out the door. So we'd make one batch per week, and then before we knew it, we were making 15 batches a week, and essentially just not sleeping and making more and more gin.
So it is Barr Hill gin. So there's this, but you also have the Tomcat as well, and you have it. You can find it in all different states and internationally as well, I suspect, right?
Yeah, so we distribute to 30 states across the nation. We do some business in Hong Kong and Montreal and Tokyo, Copenhagen, but that's all very specialty stuff. It's actually really fun, just great little cocktail bars from all over the world seem to have found our product and like to bring it there.
And it's part of what's happened is a lot of this is just word of mouth. And that must mean that people really value your product. So you've got, bartenders recommending to their customers, you got to try this. You got to try this Tomcat.
Yeah, I think so. The most people don't realize, but most of the liquor store is owned by just a small handful of companies. And when we walk in there, it's sort of like these big multi-billion-dollar companies own they own a few gins, they own a few whiskeys, they own a few rums, and they just kind of control that liquor store. I think consumers ultimately really want some sort of variety in their spirit selection, just like we do in our grocery selection or whatever it might be. I think people started to realize that. So spirits don't have to taste like sort of the standard blueprint. You can actually kind of stray and push the envelopes a little bit. And I think that's what we've done with raw honey. You know, raw honey is full of really interesting, just subtle nuances that really is the hard work of the bees. You know, just gathering all that pollen from all these different wildflowers. You know, that's essentially what gin is. You know, gin is the original flavored vodka. It's just flavored with botanicals. Well, what bees are really doing is just kind of scraping the earth of all of its really rich botanicals and bringing it back to the honey. So we're just taking that honey and allowing that sort of botanical expression to shine through in distillation.
So let's scoot ahead to last year about this time. You're getting ready for a grand opening, a beautiful new facility right in Montpelier, and that's just a gorgeous facility, and people can come there and take tours, can grab a drink, have some food trucks and whatever. So that was what you're doing last year about this time.
Yeah, last year at this time we were actually building this facility. We opened it in June, so we were right on sort of the end of it was a 5.5-year journey to build this distillery. You know, just with stops and starts of construction and financing and all those challenges. But you know, from 2011 to about 2016, we just kept growing within that small space up in Hardwick. And what was happening was over time, we were having to ship our people outside of the building because of the regulatory rules around being a distillery. So, you know, we could hold more and more spirits, but we had to move something out, and it had to be the people. So our team was getting dispersed. And that's really hard. You know, for a small company, it's really hard to be in separate spaces. So we had this pursuit of let's get this team under one roof. And then that required that we build that roof. So we built this distillery here in Montpelier over the course of many years of trying to find real estate, to designing, to figuring out, you know, sort of all the red tape associated with the hazardous space of, you know, distilling in high strength alcohol. Anyway, long story short, that became a very long path, and we finally opened in June of last year.
All right. So let's turn to this little guy. So the pandemic comes, the world and basically has to shut down, and a lot of your markets dry up overnight because people can't go out to the restaurants anymore and maybe have some of your tomcats. So that happens. Also in Vermont, we're facing it here. So we've got to slow down. We've got to stop things. And then out of that comes this little bear. Which is really helping us cope with this pandemic. So talk about the hand sanitizer and how you guys really had to change quickly to get this out to market. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so it feels like this was, you know, a 2 or 3 year project as well, but it's really all happened over the last 30 days. So, but when this first, you know, COVID-19 was clearly going to be a threat to our business, we decided to bring the whole team together and really just talk about what was about to happen. And we decided to do that in an interesting way. Distillers are frequently handling alcohol and putting, you know, when we're distilling gin, we often put it on our hands and just kind of smell it. And that gives us a sense of what we're distilling. And we were joking about how clean our hands are. And so we said, well, let's have a team building day and let's all make hand sanitizer and let everybody go home with hand sanitizer, and maybe it'll bring some fun to this kind of challenging topic. But then we realized that there was actually a national shortage of hand sanitizer, and we actually can make it. But the thing that really kind of compounded our interest in pivoting was the World Health Organization put out a formula for distillers to follow, saying, you know, this is complicated, but follow this recipe and you'll be okay. And that was sort of the first indication of maybe we should be doing this. And then the TTB and the FDA, which these are big government agencies that move very, very slowly, they started just changing the rules quickly to support our interest in doing this. But then the third piece of that is that the raw materials are really hard to come by to produce hand sanitizer, but the hardest to come by is commodity ethanol, which, you know, used to be readily available on the market. Most of the spirits industry, you know, kind of runs on the stuff. we happen to have here in Montpelier a 45 plate German copper still. Her name is Phyllis, named after my grandmother, but it's an incredibly productive column still that can produce 190 proof spirit. And quite frankly, it was an underutilized piece of equipment. We used it to make raw honey vodka, which, honey vodka is a small portion of our business. We're pretty focused on gin. So we said, wow, we could really make quite a lot of base alcohol for hand sanitizer right here in Montpelier, if we're able to kind of pivot the business and do that. So we shut down the vodka operation temporarily, and we have moved into full hand sanitizer production. Yeah,
you've got behind you. You've got a full gallon there. So if people wanted a full gallon, so talk about the bear. So this is it's sanitizer with a bear. So what's the story behind the bear?
Well, since the beginning of this, we have said to the team, we've got to find a path to survival here, because our overhead just went through the roof in building this facility. This was a big leap for us that we made less than a year ago. And so obviously, we hired a lot of people in coming here, and I think a lot of people thought, hey, my job is really threatened. And, so we had some really difficult discussions around that, but we knew that we'd find a path. We didn't know what that path was going to be. But one thing that we said was, we have to pull off basically the impossible here in sourcing things like glycerin, peroxide, packaging, labeling. I mean, there's just so much work to do to pivot a company. And, 21 days, we put together this whole business plan to produce, 20 to 30,000 gallons of hand sanitizer. So we tasked our sales team with, we can't find packaging, small format bottles. This is just a little sample one, but this sort of bottle was just basically impossible to find. And a member of our sales team, Amy Dunkey, she lives in Washington, D.C., she and everyone else were scouring the earth looking for small format packaging. And she sent an email. She said, I had no luck today, with the exception of this one container, which is a small honey bear. And she said, I know it's probably not what you're looking for, but it's a honey bear, and we're a raw honey company that, produces gin and spirits, and I thought it might work. And we all just kind of looked at each other and said, that's actually kind of a great idea. And the reality is that all of this other type packaging is in short supply because everybody's trying to do similar things to what we're doing. So you just can't find this stuff. But I don't think that there's anybody out in the honey business racing to fill up honey bears with much of anything right now, because everyone's kind of slowed down. So we said, hey, this all we need to do is put it in a small container and give it to the public. So it met the needs, and it's kind of cute too.
Well, I think there's something comforting about it. It's a cute little bear, and he's providing a valuable service. So I think it does work. It's just like, hey, it's a bear, and you're providing a service. So you've had to change dramatically. So how are you going to cope? What's next? How are you going to get through this? So you just day by day and working through this, and you've got some customers now that are buying your hand sanitizer, and I suspect. Are there a few pockets where you're still moving your gin as well?
Yep, the spirits, every restaurant in the country has shut down. And, for our products and our brand, we had a lot of focus on restaurants. That was really sort of how we always built our brand. We love dialogues with bartenders, and dialogues, from us to bartenders, and bartenders with consumers. So that's been really hard. But hand sanitizer has essentially kept the lights on for us, just by, we're using this facility more than we've ever used it. We've produced more proof gallons in the last month than this facility has ever produced, since we opened it in June. So it's been a real blessing to us for a variety of reasons. One, productivity, we're actually running, our factory's running, which is great for the team. But we also feel like we're actually a part of the fight. It feels really rewarding to go to work every day. This is a moment in time where you don't even really feel like pumping gas in the car or going to the grocery store and doing these things that used to feel so normal. But coming to work, I think I can speak for most of the team here, and it feels pretty rewarding to say, hey, the more hand sanitizer I produce, the faster the rest of our team's going to be back in here, and our customers are going to be back here enjoying our cocktail bar, and sort of the world can hopefully get back to some sort of sense of normalcy.
Yeah, and you're calling it Clean Hands, right? Clean Hands. So if people want to reach out to you, you're calling it Clean Hands, and you can do a lot of that stuff online if people need it.
Yep, people can go to our website. They can buy hand sanitizer for themselves, or we also have the program with the Clean Hands program, where they can actually, it's basically making a donation, but it's pre-buying hand sanitizer that then we distribute to first responders and healthcare workers.
Great. So thanks for what you're doing. I know it's day by day for everybody, but you're providing something that's really needed. And we wish you and your family and all your workers the best as we try to get through this. And you're an inspiration to others that have to try new things just to survive now. And you've done that. And we wish you all the best as you go forward.
Well, thank you very much. It's good to be here in Vermont.
You bet. Thanks, Ryan. We want to thank our guests for being with us with these little chats. Just a reminder, heading out into the public, make sure you have your mask for you to make sure you're safe and make sure everyone around you is safe. Stay home, stay safe, and thanks for joining us here at the Vermont Agency of Agriculture. I'm Anson Tebbetts.